Do you remember a couple modules ago, I had mentioned in the introduction of a video that I had been trying to find something funny for Gen Z and how I had talked about reading about the boomer and the Gen Z sort of war and saw these TikTok videos. That actually in that section, when I was talking to you, you class oral communication 1006, as if you were all Gen Z. That is a perfect example, a recent example, a personal example of me not doing audience analysis well, because I have to say, I am sure there are millennials, maybe Gen Xers, possibly even boomers in our classes. And I spoke to you as if you were all Gen Z. Audience analysis is really important. I said that before. And you already do this in your everyday lives. You just don't think about it. I know I used the example earlier in the semester about you would tell your best friend the details of a first date very different than you would your grandmother or your mother, possibly, likely. But the point being is you are screening, who am I talking to? What do they like? What do they not like? So on and so forth. So there's really two kinds of audience analysis that this chapter covers. And one is demographic analysis, and the other one is situational analysis. Now, the reason you want to pay attention to this content is because it will help you be more mindful and successful speaking in pretty much every situation. So when you think of demographic analysis, I know you've all heard that term, demographics, and it basically is made up of age, gender, religion, racial and ethnic, cultural backgrounds, sexual orientation, and groups. Actually, this one people don't think of often, but actually groups people belong to are part of a demographic. And what's important is we want to stay away from stereotyping and not oversimplify or make generalizations about people and groups. Now, if we were in a face-to-face class, what we would be doing for our introduction activity is you would all get into groups and you get a cereal box, a different cereal box. I'd bring a bag of cereal boxes in, and you would basically evaluate this cereal box for who you think the company, who it markets to, what groups would buy this cereal. And then after you write the demographic, you know, what age do you think it caters to? Is it a certain gender? So on and so forth. You would answer all those categories. Then you and your group would look at how you had, categorized that demographic, and you would try to think of what kind of speech would that group like to hear. Now, again, we want to make sure we're not generalizing or stereotyping, but getting to the age part of the demographics. Aristotle said that no generation thinks like another. And there are there's few things that make people so different than their generation. And I have always found studying different generations to be absolutely fascinating, especially right now, because in the workforce we have the broadest age range of working people. And it's just the I'm fascinated by seeing how different every generation thinks, and then how those people can collectively sort of understand each other to still make progress. So after age is gender. I should just say, going back to age first, is understanding and doing a little bit of research on different um, generations, on what appeals to them, what maybe doesn't appeal to them. That all those are things that can help you plan a speech that your audience will like. And keep in mind that the reason that every generation thinks so differently is because our world, every generation, the world is a different place. We buy different things. What's popular now wasn't popular when I was growing up. So and the events, like for example, I was born in the 70s, was a teenager in the 80s. I remember Ronald Reagan being shot. Okay. I remember the space shuttle exploding. There's events that I remember in my formation years that are different than other generations events. So that's why it's like that. And that may be obvious to you, but I want to make that point. Uh, Gender, you want to make sure that I don't think many of you, this is an issue, but just it needs to be said every now and again, making sure you're not saying things like saying a female doctor, for example, because that could be offensive, um, or assuming that a certain position is a male or a female, or saying a male nurse, for example, that could be very offensive. So you want to use current gender terms. And with religion, you want to be sure that you are inclusive of all religions and faiths in your speeches. And also remember to be respectful of also agnostic and atheists in your audience. Now, with racial and cultural backgrounds, the US is unmatched in diversity and mostly supports diversity. Now, I am going to talk about millennials and Gen Z here, because these generations are known to be the most tolerant and inclusive generations. But even if you're speaking to a group of majority millennials or Gen Z, you still want to learn customs that may be important to those generations, if you're outside of those generations. Sexual orientation. You want to use inclusive words and phrases, like it's like partners, for example, is very inclusive. Also, it's very offensive to use the term homosexual lifestyle, because there's no single heterosexual lifestyle, there is no single homosexual lifestyle. And then also finding out what groups the audience belongs to, very helpful. It can be very helpful. And like, for example, that I'm in Toastmasters, that I'm in Jazzercise. So you can sort of draw from that. That's fitness, speaking type stuff. Many of you, I know somebody is on the basketball team, for example. That would be considered as you're evaluating what kind of speeches that audience would like. So that is just a super basic summary of what you what you look at when you're doing an audience analysis. You're trying to find out, is there an age range? Is there a certain cultural background, or is it a blend? Is it going to be mostly a certain religion, or is it a mix? And all these things are going to be considered. I have had a catering business, and I still work in catering. And this might be a real simplified way to put it, but let's just say if I am planning for a menu of 300 people, I'm not going to pick like let's say sushi as the main dish, because a lot of people don't like raw fish, right? I'm not going to do sashimi and make that the main thing. I'm going to pick something more universal. So again, those are the things you're going to want to think about as you're brainstorming your speech and planning it and think about the delivery. I am at 11 minutes. I'm going to tell you really quick because I know we don't like long videos. Situational analysis is thinking about more of your space that you're speaking. For example, if you're a guest speaker somewhere, if you're going to interview in a certain spot, some tips are go check out the room so it's familiar to you first. You are going to speak differently in a big room than you do a tiny little closed room. You're going to consider things like time of day. You may plan your speech a little bit differently if it's 8 in the morning to people that have to be there and don't want to be there, opposed to, you have some fantastic speaker that everybody is seeking after to hear, and you're like the opener. So you're just things like other things in situational analysis. Oh, noise. Okay, so let's say there's noise. I was doing a teaching demo about a year ago, and somebody was doing construction against the other wall. And I'll tell you how you handle that if there's noise is you just keep going. Don't let it disrupt or interfere with you. You just proceed. And the less it bothers and disturbs you, the less your audience is even going to know it's happening. Now, there's exceptions to that, but in general, if there's a kid that just starts, whatever, crying, just proceed, okay? And you'll know when those exceptions are, you need to stop. But that's the general rule. Other things to consider are the temperature in the room. So not only the time of day, but the temperature in the room. You're going to, if you can, adjust that. And these are just different things that you'll want to try to plan for in advance if you can, if you are going to speak somewhere you're not familiar with. So, oops, I'm at 13 minutes and 30 seconds, and that is all I'm going to share with you today as far as real basic demographic and situational analysis.